Assistant U.S. Attorney Adrian Calloway sat at his desk, scanning the verdict with a grim satisfaction. He had just secured a conviction against Giovanni El Rey Morales, the notorious head of the Iron Claw cartel. Morales was not just a drug lord. He was a symbol of lawlessness, his empire stained with the blood of countless innocents. For over a decade, Morales had operated untouchably, until now. The trial was the culmination of years of work, a perfect storm of evidence, strategy, and calculated risks. Adrian had spearheaded the case, earning both admiration and resentment from his peers. His unrelenting focus on justice was matched only by his near-obsessive need to win. This was his masterpiece. In the courtroom, Adrian had been a force of nature. He dismantled Morales's defense with surgical precision, anticipating every move the defense team made. His secret weapon? A mole from within the cartel, a mid-level operative who had flipped after a grueling series of interrogations. Adrian protected his identity until the very last moment, unveiling him as a witness in a dramatic twist that left the courtroom gasping. Mr. Morales, Adrian had thundered during his closing argument, is not just a criminal. He is a predator, preying on the weak, exploiting the vulnerable, and profiting from misery. Today, this courtroom has the chance to send a message. No one is above the law. The jury deliberated for less than 5 hours. Morales was found guilty on all charges: drug trafficking, money laundering, and a string of brutal murders. It was a career-defining victory for Adrian, the kind that earned accolades and invitations to elite gatherings. But Adrian didn't celebrate. He rarely did. Justice wasn't a cause for celebration. It was a duty. Adrian returned home that evening to his spacious suburban house, where his wife, Claire, and their 7 children waited. The scene was picture-perfect: laughter, the smell of freshly baked cookies, and the warmth of family. For the public, Adrian Calloway was the epitome of a successful man, dedicated to his work, a pillar of morality, and a loving father. His children ranged in age from 3 to 16, each unique and vibrant. Claire, his wife of 18 years, was the anchor of their family, managing the chaos of their home with grace. To outsiders, Adrian's life seemed flawless. But beneath the surface lay a man tightly wound, always seeking control, always expecting perfection, from his cases, his colleagues, and his family. It started with a phone call, a routine doctor's appointment for his youngest child. Adrian hadn't thought much of it until Claire hesitated when he asked about a paternity test. Their youngest had a rare blood condition, the doctor explained, and routine genetic testing had revealed something unusual. Adrian's blood type was incompatible. He brushed it off at first, but the words lingered, gnawing at him. He couldn't let it go. Over the next week, he secretly tested all 7 children. The results shattered him. None of them were his. Not one. Claire's betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a violation of everything Adrian held sacred. His life, meticulously built on justice and truth, now seemed like a cruel joke. The home he'd cherished, the children he'd loved, the wife he'd trusted, all of it was a lie. Adrian couldn't bring himself to confront Claire immediately. He was methodical by nature, and before he acted, he needed answers. His first step was to secure her medical records. Using his connections and legal expertise, he discreetly obtained documentation from every hospital and clinic where Claire had given birth. It confirmed what he feared. There was no record of infertility treatments, no signs of artificial insemination. Every child had been conceived naturally. The next step was more invasive. Adrian hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent known for her discretion. She traced Claire's movements over the years, combing through financial records, travel logs, and correspondence. The findings sent shockwaves through Adrian's already crumbling world. Claire had maintained long-term relationships with multiple men, none of whom Adrian had known. Each of the children had a different biological father, and their conceptions were not the result of brief encounters but calculated choices. The investigator found love letters hidden in a storage unit Claire had rented under a fake name. Letters from men who poured out their devotion to her, believing they were her only secret. It was clear that Claire had masterfully manipulated these men. She had carefully chosen them: a promising young artist, a university professor, a successful entrepreneur, a struggling musician, a fitness trainer, a politician, and most chillingly, Adrian's own former law school rival. When Adrian finally confronted Claire, his rage barely contained, she didn't deny it. She sat at the dining-room table, her hands trembling, and looked him in the eye. "I had my reasons, Adrian," she said, her voice almost defiant. "You've always been so obsessed with control, so focused on your image, your career. I needed something that was mine. Something you couldn't dictate, couldn't mold into your version of perfect." Her words sliced through him. "You're saying our entire marriage was a lie?" "No, it wasn't," she replied quickly. "I love you, Adrian. I always have. But I couldn't stand being just an accessory in your life. I needed more. More." Adrian spat, his voice rising. "So you built a life on lies? You brought 7 children into this world, children you let me believe were mine, and you call that love?" Claire looked away, tears streaming down her face. "I never thought you'd find out, and I never wanted to hurt you. But those children, they're not just mine. They're yours, Adrian. You raised them. You're their father, no matter what biology says." Her words only deepened his fury. To Adrian, the betrayal was absolute. The children he had devoted his life to, whom he had loved unconditionally, were now tainted by Claire's deceit. He could no longer see them as his own. They were living reminders of her lies. As Adrian's investigator dug deeper, she uncovered the identities of the men Claire had been involved with. Each represented a piece of the puzzle Claire had meticulously assembled over the years. Elliot Marks, the artist, was the father of their eldest daughter. A man of passion and creativity, he had met Claire at an art exhibition before Adrian's career had taken off. Their affair lasted a year, with Claire convincing him she was trapped in a loveless marriage. Dr. Henry Winslow, the professor, was the father of their second child. Claire had attended one of his lectures, enamored by his intellect. She cultivated a relationship, convincing him he was the only one who truly understood her. Gavin Wright, the entrepreneur, was a charismatic businessman Claire had met at a charity gala. His confidence and charm drew her in, and she saw him as the perfect father for their third child. Leo Hart, the musician, represented rebellion. His bohemian lifestyle and carefree nature were a stark contrast to Adrian's rigid discipline. He fathered their fourth child. Damon Cole, the fitness trainer, was a brief but intense affair. Claire admired his physicality and determination, believing his genes would produce a strong, resilient child, their fifth. Marcus Kane, the politician, was a calculated choice. A man of influence and ambition, he fathered their sixth child. Victor Sterling, Adrian's former rival, was the cruelest twist. Victor had always harbored resentment toward Adrian for besting him in law school. His affair with Claire was as much about revenge as it was passion. He was the biological father of their youngest child. Adrian Calloway's rage consumed him. The man known for his cold precision and mastery in the courtroom now found his thoughts spiraling into chaos. He replayed Claire's confession in his mind, each word fueling his anger. The truth wasn't just a betrayal. It was a demolition of his identity. For years, Adrian had poured his life into his family, believing he was building something enduring. Now, every memory felt poisoned. His home, once a sanctuary, became a prison. He avoided looking at the children, their faces now bearing the ghostly resemblance of strangers, Claire's lovers. His resentment festered into a toxic storm, and he began isolating himself, retreating to the basement under the guise of work. There, surrounded by his meticulously organized case files and accolades, Adrian's mind churned with dark thoughts. Every rational instinct told him to walk away, to divorce Claire and start anew. But reason had abandoned him. He felt humiliated, emasculated, and betrayed on a level he couldn't reconcile. To Adrian, there was only one way to reclaim control. It was a Friday evening. Claire had made lasagna, the children's favorite, and the family gathered around the table, oblivious to the storm brewing inside Adrian. He sat quietly, barely touching his plate, his eyes darting between Claire and the children. They laughed and talked, their joy grating against his seething fury. After dinner, he sent the children to their rooms, telling them he'd read them a story before bed. Claire lingered in the kitchen, washing dishes, humming softly, a habit that once endeared her to him but now felt like mockery. Adrian moved methodically. He retrieved a handgun from his study, one he'd confiscated from an old case and never turned in. His heart pounded, but his mind was eerily calm. This was justice, he told himself. Claire had destroyed their family, and the children, though innocent, were the living embodiments of her deceit. In his twisted logic, he convinced himself they'd be better off free from the stain of their mother's lies. He began with the children. One by one, he entered their rooms under the pretense of tucking them in. Each child looked up at him with trusting eyes, unaware of the horror about to unfold. His hand didn't shake as he pulled the trigger, silencing their laughter forever. When he reached Claire, she didn't scream or fight back. She stared at him with wide, tearful eyes, whispering, "I'm sorry." Her apology only enraged him further. He fired once, ending her life instantly. The murders were swift, but Adrian's escape was carefully planned. He wiped down the house, destroying evidence that could tie him to the crime. He took cash from a hidden safe, burned his personal documents, and disappeared into the night. For 3 months, Adrian evaded capture. He moved from city to city, using fake IDs and blending into the shadows. The once renowned prosecutor now lived as a fugitive, haunted by the faces of his family. He avoided the news but couldn't escape the headlines plastered across every major outlet. Prominent federal prosecutor wanted for grisly family murder. Adrian knew it was only a matter of time before the law caught up with him. But he wasn't running to evade justice. He was running from himself. Adrian's luck ran out in a small Montana town. A gas station clerk recognized him from a news report and alerted authorities. The arrest was swift, and Adrian was taken into custody without resistance. In the courtroom where he once stood as a symbol of justice, he now sat as the accused, a shadow of the man he had been. The trial was a media circus. Prosecutors painted him as a cold-blooded killer, while his defense team argued insanity, pointing to the psychological toll of Claire's betrayal. But the jury wasn't swayed. Adrian was convicted on all counts and sentenced to death. In prison, Adrian was isolated, both for his own safety and the safety of others. The once proud prosecutor was now an object of ridicule among inmates and guards alike. He spent his days replaying the events that led him to this point, tormented by the faces of his children. 2 weeks before his execution date, Adrian made his final move. Using bed sheets, he fashioned a noose and hung himself in his cell. When the guards found his lifeless body, they discovered a note scrawled on the wall in his own blood. "Justice is blind, but vengeance sees all." Adrian Calloway's story became a cautionary tale, a grim reminder of how even the most righteous can be consumed by darkness. The details of his life and crimes were dissected endlessly in documentaries, books, and true crime podcasts. But for those who knew him, the man who fought so fiercely for justice became a symbol of its tragic failure, a man undone by the very principles he once lived for. We hope you are enjoying our stories. Please subscribe and share our video. We love you all. Thank you.